Welcome to another OU Insider YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. Our man Spencer Forsythe is on the board, making sure everything goes well. Fingers crossed we don't have any hiccups. I'm in California. Parker's back home in Norman after being at the College World Series this whole week. Yeah, it's a wild ride for the Oklahoma Sooner baseball team. We're going to discuss that ad nauseum, I'm sure, on this YouTube Live. 1.5, wait, not even that. Literally 1 month and like 4 or 5 days from the Sooners reporting for fall camp in August. July 4th rolling around the corner. And when you know that hits, that means Big 12 Media Day is right around the corner. Parker, myself, Joey, Brian Bishop, Hayden will all be out there at the Big 12 Media Days covering that full blow for you guys. And obviously we're going to talk recruiting. Everybody wants to talk it. July is rolling around and we've hinted July could be pretty fun if you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan. June was kind of the precursor and it's not over. Something tells me in about 36 hours, there could be some more good news for Sooners fans potentially. So pay attention to that. We're going to talk a lot about that. So Parker, how you doing, man? I know you were down in college. You were up in Omaha watching the College World Series, covering that for us on OU Insider. Talk about your experience. Talk about just everything that happened. I know everybody's going to want to talk about Ole Miss fans dominated 90% of the audience, and that's what won the ball. No, Ole Miss was freaking hot. They were also number one in the country at one point this year. So it's not like they weren't a bad baseball club.
No, they were a very good baseball club, Brandon. And, you know, being an Omaha kid, having grown up attending the College World Series and covering the College World Series, most recently as a TV intern back in 2019, obviously an environment and an event that I was very familiar with. And it was really cool to get to watch that Oklahoma baseball team participate in the CWS, having grown up essentially a stone's throw from the stadium, a little bit more than a stone's throw, about a 20-minute drive, but comparative to where a lot of other folks live in relation to Charles Schwab Field, right down the road for me. So obviously had no idea at the outset of the season that that's where Skip Johnson and the Oklahoma Baseball Club were going to end up, but it was a ton of fun. They had quite a ride, made it a whole lot further than anybody anticipated they would, and rolled into that championship series with a lot of belief that they could close the deal with the national title. Obviously it didn't turn out that way. Credit to Ole Miss and head coach Mike Bianco. But yeah, ton of fun. Glad to be back in Norman because there is so much happening on the recruiting trail. It's that time of year, Brandon, where things are flying from a million different directions.
It's crazy.
You got commitments, you got visits, you got guys cutting down their lists. You've got all these moving parts. You got the Texas Longhorns making quite a surge for the ages, I might add, over the last few days after the commitment of Arch Manning. So yeah, it's been wild. It's been really wild.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this. I think Cade Horton, I think we need to talk about him because I think of anybody and everybody that was in Omaha, he is the one person I feel like, and just from what we talked about, his struggle coming back, finally, I think back in April, getting that slider back and then really fine tuning it through the month of May and into the month of June. And he got hot with it because he had been rested up after Tommy John surgery. You and I covered him in high school. We watched him play baseball, both you and I did. We watched him play football, both you and I did. He was a phenomenal athlete at Norman. People may not believe this, but that dude could play for Oklahoma as a quarterback. He was that good. There's a reason why Lincoln Riley was like, yeah, dude, go do what you want, but make sure you have a helmet on and come here. It never really worked out, panned out to that. He's a baseball player, but talk about how much money he made over the last 2 weeks, at least. I mean, that dude, he put on a show all week long.
It was legendary. What we witnessed
Yeah.
was legendary. One of the greatest individual performances in College World Series history. The unfortunate part is it's likely going to be swept under the rug and to a certain extent forgotten, not by Oklahoma fans, but by the rest of the nation, by the college baseball world as a whole, simply because it came in a futile losing effort. But
yeah,
for Cade Horton to record 11 strikeouts in his first start and a College World Series Finals record 13 strikeouts in his second start, that made him a lot of money. And he out of high school, he was already a top 50 MLB draft prospect. So it wasn't as if he all of a sudden shot onto the scene for MLB scouts. No, a lot of them knew exactly who this dude was. And with a performance that he put up at the CWS, he very much vaulted himself into borderline first round territory should he elect to come out for the MLB draft. I think the prevailing opinion is that he's going to stick around in Norman for another year, which I think is a great decision, because if he can do what he did at the CWS over the course of an entire season in Norman, he has the opportunity to not only be a first round draft pick, but potentially a top 10 or even a top 5 draft pick. That's how high his ceiling is, as a guy that is just
you think he's
sheer
Gray high?
power. You think he's what now? Jonathan Gray?
Besides Gray,
talking about?
Jonathan Gray. Yeah.
What, did he go third overall? I'm trying to remember.
I thought he was first. Was he not?
Exactly.
He may have been third. No, it's third with the Rockies. That's right. Third with the Rockies. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think could be? Do you think he could be that high? First 3 pick in the draft?
I think he could. I think he's got that type of arsenal as a pitcher, because anytime you can come over the top with a clean, repeatable motion and make the glove pop at 96, 97, you have major league stuff just based on that alone. But I think what sets him apart is the ability to mix it up, maintain command. He threw 79 of his 107 pitches for strikes on Sunday. That's an astronomical ball strike ratio. Astronomical. So when you can command 4 pitches the way that he does, and you can put up an entire season, like I said, of that same stuff that you saw from Horton at the CWS, there's a very realistic chance he is a top 10 MLB draft pick next year, because you just don't see talent like his on the mound all that often, whether at the high school level or the collegiate level. He's a special type of talent.
Wow. Hold on.
Are you good?
It's like I'm still you're hearing top 10 pick.
Interesting.
Wow.
Do you have, are you watching?
Hold on. Wow, that sucked. Hold on.
I was about to say, do you have the YouTube feed up in a different window?
Yeah, and it like went to the YouTube feed, bro. Like I always do that. And it somehow went to the YouTube feed. That was super weird.
Interesting.
That was super, super weird.
Well, see, there's our hiccup. There's always one.
There's
right?
always one.
There's always one,
There's
whether
always
it's my
one.
camera shutting off or starting late. There's always one hiccup with this live, but hopefully that's
we
the
got
only
it back
hiccup
real quick. Yep.
Boom.
Anyway, so the point being is that 2010 team, and I wanted to talk about that real quick, because I was Dylan Overton. His brother-in-law is one of my best friends. Grew up together, went to college, roommate together, all that type of stuff. That pitching arsenal was one of the best I've ever seen in Norman. I mean, you've got Dylan Overton, who ended up, I think, being a 3rd round pick, if I remember correctly. And he was picked, I believe it was like the 9th round out of high school in Weatherford to the Boston Red Sox. And then he was picked. I can't remember who he was picked for. The Oakland A's. He's picked the Oakland A's in like the 3rd round. So, and he had a pretty good Major League Baseball. A couple of times he got in there and pitched, was called up, did really well for a little bit. That team, my point is that team, I believe, because we didn't get to see 2020, so it's really hard for us to say much about 2020, even though it was probably the most talented team in the last, 12, 13 years. That team, I think, rivaled as far as hitting goes. I think 2022 was better. Pitching, it's hard for me. Just outside, obviously Trevor Michaels closing, obviously Cade Horton. Bennett was really good, except for game one of the College World Series, he struggled mightily, and I think everybody knows that. But I think if you looked at the pitching as a whole, I think 2010 was more of a pitching squad. 2022 was more hitting. With the pitching came around later on in the season, and obviously Cade Horton became, and he was the reason why it came around later on in the season because he got healthy. So, anyways, it was a special run by Skip Johnson and the Sooners. I think that goes without saying. And with the recruiting that they've done and how young they are, they have a chance to return. It's never a given, but they have a chance to continue to be a really dominant force in the Big 12 moving forward. Let's talk about obviously recruiting. I mean, where do we start? Do we start with Arch Manning? You got to start with Arch, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's
with a bad, end with good. Let's start with bad and end with good. How about that, folks?
Well, the Arch effect is real. You've seen it over the last few days. Texas is, like I said at the top, on a surge for the ages. I rarely, if ever, have I seen a cavalcade of commitments like the one you've seen for Texas over the last few days. Most recently, they got 3-star edge rusher Billy Walton of South Oak Cliff to flip from Oklahoma State this morning. They got 5-star safety Derrick Williams out of the state of Louisiana yesterday. They had 5 commitments in a day on Sunday, 4 of them from offensive linemen. So, yes, Texas is having a banner week on the recruiting trail. There's no way
to days. Finish up in June, baby. And there's the June national champs.
There's no way to diminish what they're doing because it's remarkable and it's impressive. But you also have to acknowledge, Brandon, regardless of where your allegiance lies, that this is not out of the ordinary for Texas. No. They recruit very well year in and year out. The issues that Texas has had over the last decade and the problems that have plagued that program do not boil down to recruiting.
No, it's been culture. And I was talking to somebody today and they even said it. They're like, look, Texas can do what they want in the recruiting game because they're always going to be able to do what they want in the recruiting game. It's the development. It's the culture. It's can they get past that hump of being known as soft, culturally dysfunctional. They've been known as that for the last 15 years, literally. I would say 14 years. Ever since the end of 2009, they were 13 years. They've been known as culturally dysfunctional. It has gone downhill each and every year. And it's been something, they have too many hands in the cookie jar. And I think you will see that come to fruition again this season. I don't think they're going to be 5-7. I will say that. I don't think they're going 5-7. I don't think they're going 6-6. I think they're 7-5, 8-4 team. I think they have a good chance of doing that. But is 7-5, 8-4 going to be enough to save Sarkisian?
Yes, and I think and he bought himself a lot of insurance.
I think Manning. I think Manning probably saved him.
Yeah,
but
they could go 5-7 again. They could go 5-7 again, and if they keep that class together, I think he sticks around. Just because
that is
the promise of next year, I think is going to be enough to keep him on the sidelines for UT, even if that is the case. Now, as far as the surge for Texas is concerned, again, I think you have to acknowledge the fact that Texas recruits well every year. It is not out of the ordinary for them to be cemented in the top 5 in the 24/7 sports team rankings. Now the question is, what can you do with it? Because you rewind to 2018, I believe Texas had the number 3 class in the nation that year under Tom Herman.
If you fast forward 2 years,
if you fast forward 4 years, right, you figure, okay, a lot of those guys should be going to the NFL. Texas had 0 NFL draft picks in April of 2022.
Right.
So again, the challenge for Texas's staff at this point really isn't as much about acquiring the talent, because at a place like Texas, that's really never going to be much of an issue. It's once you have the talent, now you have to develop these guys. You have to get them to play together as a cohesive unit, and you have to cultivate a championship culture. That's the more difficult end of things at Texas, and always has been.
Look, and I'm going to say something that it may be controversial. I really don't care. And it's not so much for OU fans, but for people watching it that, like or cover other teams, whatever. When you add the culture that has been at Oklahoma since 1999, and it has stayed the same. Riley, and I know this actually will be controversial to some OU fans. Lincoln Riley didn't ruin the culture at Oklahoma. That it stayed fairly similar. Now, it didn't progress, and I think that's something we all can agree on. It didn't progress, and it may have taken a step or two back, but it didn't take a leap. Like we're talking small step or two back, because they continue to win. They continue to go to the playoffs. They continue to compete for conference titles and berths to the conference title game and playoff appearances. So it didn't change what the foundation Bob Stoops laid. As a matter of fact, what Brent Venables did is he brought himself back, who helped lay that foundation, by the way. He brought Jerry Schmidt back, who helped lay that foundation, by the way. He brought Josh Norman in, who helped lay that foundation as a player. He brought Todd Bates, who helped build Clemson into what it was. Chavis, who was an off-field guy, helped lay that foundation at Clemson, not only as a player, but as a coach. He brought in Brandon Hall, who helped lay the foundation as a student assistant back in the late 90s, early 2000s, won a national title, became a GA at Oklahoma, and then moved on to a couple other places, Troy being the main one, before he became the safeties coach at Oklahoma. So all these guys, basically Venables he brought back in winners. When Valai was at Texas, I believe the last year he was there, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong. I haven't looked at his resume 100%, was 2020. And that was the best season I believe Texas had in the last decade and almost a half, the 10-4 year.
Yes, that's their only double-digit win season since they went to the national championship against Alabama in 2009.
And let remind you, and I'm looking up his coaching career right now as I talk about it. Correct, he was 2020, the best year that Texas had, even in his secondary, the best year they've had in the last gosh knows how long was the year that Valai was there. So it's almost as if, and call me crazy, that Venables brought in guys that are winners, and he kept a strong contingent. Oh, we didn't even mention Jeff Lebby was around when Oklahoma was building that foundation and winning as a player and as a GA at Oklahoma. So all these guys understand what needs to be done at the university. The culture's there. That's something that isn't going to go away at OU. Now, I know on the recruiting side of it, Oklahoma fans are going, but the 3 stars, Drumm, Parker, what's going on with that? The 3 stars. Okay, let's talk about those guys. Caleb Spencer. And this isn't sunshine pumping. This is fact from what we've talked about from people, not us, people that cover them around the country that are in charge of the rankings, mind you. Caleb Spencer has a chance to be one of those 4-star guys by the end of the cycle. Caleb Hicks is a 4-star running back. Keon Brown, everybody, I talked to Andrew Ivins. That dude can ball. Everybody thinks he can ball. There's a really good chance that he is a 4-star by the end of the cycle.
He was a 4-star when he committed. It's just the scrambling of the rankings. I think the incorporation of On3's rankings into the composite was what lost him that 4th star. So he's a blue chip level talent.
Yeah. And so there you go. Cade McIntyre, you've talked to people. I've talked to people about him. Everybody you talk about him talks about how tough he is, how great of an athlete he is. Guy that you can, he's literally a chameleon. You can play him at any position as long as he can put the frame on, and he will be a very good contributor at the next level. Everybody says it. Smart, athletic, tough, rugged, hardworking. I mean, basically fits what Venables wants in a player. Then you've got obviously a slew of other guys. Heath, Ozada, right? I mean,
Ozida.
Ozida. I say it wrong every time I say Ozada because that's what it's spelled like. Heath Ozida. Look, I've talked to some people about him. Everybody thinks he has a high upside. Now, they don't know where he stands as far as strength goes, as far as what he could develop in. They think he has a chance to be really good. He's probably the biggest of the guys as far as the 3 stars that you look at and you go, okay, you know, interesting. But at the same time, you've got to give Bill Bedenbaugh his due because Ben Powers, Orlando Brown, Drew Samia, I'm trying to think of all the 3 stars over the years that's really developed into really good players for him. There's been a slew of them that ended up in the NFL 3-star. Creed Humphrey wasn't even a 4-star across the board. No, he
Cody
wasn't.
Ford was another 3-star.
Cody Ford was another 3-star. It's just so to me, I'm just like, look, guys, this isn't something new. If Bedenbaugh thinks you can play, and he thinks you fit his mentality of being the tough, hard-nosed, athletic guy that can play multiple spots on the offensive line, he's going to offer you because he thinks he can develop you into that player that's going to be at the next level. It's great to get the Bray Walkers of the world, the 5 stars, the Wanye Morrises, the Anton Harrises, the Aaron Park. I literally laid out the offensive line that Oklahoma got. Since somebody's like, oh, here we go again. There he goes. Bedenbaugh's always just getting 3 stars. And did you see the list I did? It was literally, there was like 3 stars out of like 15 guys. Everybody was 4 and 5 star. Outside that, I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, this isn't like something. It just in the transfer portal, he's great with it. Look at Matuire. Matuire was a 4-star transfer.
No, he was a 3-star.
Transfer.
Oh, 4-star. Yeah, 4-star in the portal. Yeah.
It's 4.
But again, that's another example of a guy that was originally a 3-star recruit.
Developed. Crazy, right?
Imagine that.
Was all Pac-12, started 38 games for Cal. Really good. Wanted to go up to the next level and get developed by Bedenbaugh. When you talk to offensive linemen, recruits, they will tell you there is nobody that develops. Like they may not choose Oklahoma in the end, but all of them will tell you there's nobody that develops like Bedenbaugh. So if the offensive line recruits know that, yeah, they may not all choose Oklahoma. And look, it's been a struggle for OU to pick up, mainly because when you look at Oklahoma's offensive line over the last few, it's been very youthful. So if you're an offensive line recruit trying to come in, you're looking at that going, no, I'm not going to go there because there's so many dudes going to return potentially over the next few. COVID has hurt that, actually has hurt Oklahoma when it comes to that. So there's a lot of parts that are playing into that. Peyton Kirkland, I think Oklahoma has a really good shot with. Logan Howland, I think, is the interesting one. I was talking to somebody today, and there's no decision that's been. It feels like Iowa, but
feels like Iowa's the pick there. That's what it feels like right now. But Oklahoma's not out of it, and that's not a done deal. It's just giving off a lot of Iowa vibes.
It is, but even the person I talked to who knows the head coach of that school was like, yeah, it kind of feels like it's an Iowa-Oklahoma battle, but at the same time, I don't think he knows where he wants to go. That's literally what I was told. And so, yeah, it does kind of feel like if that's the case, Iowa kind of feels like the spot because usually when Oklahoma gets somebody, we've been talking about it for a while leading up to it, and there's like really not a lot of hesitation. And there is there. I mean, even with the Peyton Kirkland deal, yeah, Michigan State's making a run, but you still kind of feel good about Oklahoma's chances, right? Like there's that feeling that that Oklahoma has just been that school that's always just been lingering with Peyton Kirkland for the last few years, and they're potentially could be the pick at the end. I don't want to say probably, because I don't want to get everybody's hopes up. So there's a lot to play out on the offensive line moving forward. I know people are wanting to talk about Cole Adams. I got a lot on that, but I'll let you talk first.
As far as Cole Adams is concerned, we want to stay on that.
Yeah, everybody's talking about our crystal ball pick. Yeah, everybody wants to talk about our crystal ball pick.
At the end of the day, it's not, it shouldn't be all too shocking, I don't think, just because Alabama was in on Cole Adams early. They recruited him very fervently. The offer was committable, Brandon. Imagine that. And Oklahoma kind of dragged their feet. The Sooners waited until May to offer Cole Adams, and at that point, Bama had a significant leg up. And so with those crystal balls from myself and Brandon in favor of the Crimson Tide, again, Alabama's kind of been the leader for a while. That hasn't been a secret.
Yeah.
And there was a time where Oklahoma made a surge. The Sooners hosted Adams for an official visit, which was a win in and of itself. But always kind of got the feeling that Bama's lead was going to be tough to overcome, especially because they were quicker to the punch than Oklahoma. And obviously tonight, Brandon and I are comfortable projecting that Bama ends up being the spot for Cole Adams, the 4-star wideout out of Owasso.
Yeah, look, I went up and saw him last week, and he and I talked for a while when he was going between his sessions of 7-on-7. And he said, look, when I went to Alabama, it was hard for me not to commit. When he said that to me, I was like, oh, man, that's interesting, because when he talked about Oklahoma, he said, it was hard for me not to commit, but I knew I needed to go to Arkansas to check that out. There wasn't a but after his, it was hard for me not to commit at Alabama. He followed that up with, because when you look at who they are and this, and this. And that's not a knock on Oklahoma. It's not a knock on Arkansas. It's a kid whose brother goes to OU, who's a junior at the University of Oklahoma. It's a kid that is just enamored with what Saban has done.
And how can you not be?
And yeah, exactly. How could you not be? He's seen Sloan just get drafted. Another, guy that's built like him. He's seen the wide receivers at Alabama be very successful. I think it's just how this thing played out. But at the end of the day, it hurts to lose an in-state kid. It does. I get it. Parker and I both understand that's just, the optics aren't the greatest when that happens. But when you look at what Oklahoma is in a really good spot to land, when you're talking about Jaquays Petaway, when you're talking about Anthony Evans, you already have Keon Brown on board, and there's a few other players out there that Oklahoma would love. Look, Oklahoma would be fine with landing 3 wide receivers, right? A 4th would be icing on the cake. That is just what it is. So if they were to land Cole Adams, that would have been icing on the cake. If they land Jaquays Petaway and Anthony Evans, which I think they have a very good shot to do, they're content with Keon Brown. They are. They're just content. They're good. I think they'll go and they'll try to push for one more. If not, portal is where that will end up being taking place. And that may be where their head's at. I don't know that for sure, but they may just go, you know what, let's just go check out the portal and see what we can find there. Somebody come in and help. If Marvin Mims decide to leave, fill in that spot or something like that. I don't know. But that's kind of where we're hearing things are at. 3 is perfect, 4 is icing on the cake. If not, let's go in the portal and see how that plays out. But yeah, the optics suck to lose an in-state kid as good as Cole Adams. It's never great. But if you're going to lose somebody like that, at least Oklahoma's in good position to land 2 guys that are ranked very high and that are very, very good players. They need slot guys this year. They've got plenty of tall dudes over the last few years. And then when you add Keon Brown to that list, it all 100%, you've got to go get a couple of fast slot guys. And Jaquays Petaway, Oklahoma is in a very, very, very good spot for him. And that decision could be made by the end of July, potentially. That's something we're watching very closely. Uh, is there questions going on here? Something that we're missing? Here's one I do want to touch on real quick, Parker.
Okay.
What happened with, like, seriously, and this is from a guy named Jason, Caden McDonald, LeBlanc, what happened with Renaud, players like that? What's important?
So what exactly is that question?
I guess he wants to
at?
know what's going on with those guys. That's I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, look, as far as Caden,
I read it verbatim, literally.
Yeah,
verbatim.
yeah, I know, I get you. As far as Caden McDonald is concerned, that's a guy that's already visited OU twice. There's a chance he gets back to campus in the fall for an official visit. So you don't feel quite as good about OU's chances as you maybe once did, but nonetheless, that's still a race that Oklahoma is in. With Jordan Renaud, I'll be honest, Brandon knows a whole lot more about that situation than I do, but it does kind of feel like he's been trending not necessarily away from OU.
It's last who gets him last on campus. That's what.
Yeah, that's kind of what it kind of feels like. He's been one of those guys that's his opinion changes with the wind. And then as far as Edric Hill, that same song, second verse with Cole Adams.
Go ahead.
The Sooners waited too long.
Go ahead. You just added another steel-toed kick to the scrotum to the Sooners fans.
Yeah, I mean,
because Edric seemed like when he was offered that, it was like, dude, he's going to visit OU and it's going to happen. Like, we all thought that was the case, and then he was like, I got what I wanted. You waited too long.
Yeah, no, legit. Like, if Oklahoma offers Edric Hill in March, I think he's a Sooner right now.
Yeah.
They waited till June, and now that appears to be off the table. And it sounds like from people I talked to that are close to Edric after the Alabama visit this past weekend, that looks to be where he ends up. And it's another L for all the same people that said Cole Adams didn't have a committable offer to Alabama, that were saying Edric Hill doesn't have a committable offer to Alabama. Looks like he's going to head to Tuscaloosa if things hold. That doesn't affect Oklahoma's chances at all with PJ Adebawore. He is, from what I understand, and from talking to people close to him as well as PJ himself, that's a decision that could come down within the next couple of weeks. So he is on a very similar timeline to Caden Green. A lot of folks asking about him. Obviously, Oklahoma is the favorite heading into his announcement on July 8th. There's a lot of buzz lately from Missouri, and I don't want to discount Missouri. I don't want to seem like I'm taking a dig at Missouri, but as of right now, you look at the fact that they brought in Luther Burden last year from St. Louis. They were able to keep him home in the state over Oklahoma and over Georgia and over Alabama. That was a huge recruiting win for Missouri. But in the grand scheme of things, that's the exception, not the rule. Missouri has not been able on a regular basis to keep a lot of those blue chip high end guys close to home. And so for Caden Green, I've never really bought Missouri as a legit contender. That always just kind of felt like they're the home state school. They're a program that Caden grew up watching, and they've recruited him pretty ardently for a long time. He's got buddies that go to Missouri. One of them, Armand Membo, signed with the Tigers in the class of 2022 as a 3-star offensive lineman, former teammate of Caden's. So he's got connections to Missouri. He's got relationships at Missouri, but I just never really bought Missouri because it felt like Caden Green was too big for Missouri, quite honestly. And if you're concerned about anybody heading into the July 8th decision, to me, the pecking order right now is Oklahoma, Nebraska, LSU. And so I don't think at any point, and I said this on the boards last night, I don't think Caden Green, I don't think Missouri has ever been in the top 3 for Caden Green, the way I see it. And so not really buying that smoke. I think Oklahoma is in the best position. I know Nebraska and LSU both showed him something on the official visit. So basically what I'm trying to communicate is, if you are worried about Caden Green heading into that July 8th decision. Be worried about Nebraska or be worried about LSU. Don't really need to be worried about Missouri.
Yeah, and then with the question about LeBlanc and we got to say hello to Ricardo LeBlanc. I know people have already said that in the chat, and I was literally was DM that. Don't forget to say hello to Ricardo LeBlanc. It's kind of been a thing now, but with LeBlanc, where LeBlanc goes, look, he's going to announce on July 29th, 1:30, I think, on CBS Sports, from what his dad tells me. And I was allowed to say that. We had to hold off on it. Like Parker can tell you, I knew the date of the announcement, or July 28th. Sorry, July 28th. I knew the date a couple of days before he had announced, but they wanted to be the ones to put it out. They had a whole thing they wanted to do with it, with the edit and all that type of stuff. So we held off and just kind of said, look, there could be an announcement coming soon. Just pay attention to LeBlanc and all that type of stuff. And on OU Insider. That it's really close, guys. Like, I know everybody wants to go Oklahoma, and I don't. I feel like Oklahoma will be the pick just because, and this is why, just because he's got such a strong relationship with Coach Bates, and he was really close with Coach Bates when he was at Clemson and Coach Venables. So that relationship stands longer than the one he has with the staff of Florida. But Florida's close to home, and he's been there like 20 something times. He just visited there twice this past week too. So because of that, there is some hesitancy from my end, obviously, to say, yeah, I think Oklahoma's in really good position. Now they're in really good position, but I feel like so is Florida. Now the thing you've got to understand is they play this thing really close to the vest. And so they're not tipping their hand any which way. Like, for those that thought it was OU, the 2 trips to Florida just screwed with them right before the dead period. So, but it could also be, LeBlanc looking to see for sure how he felt about Florida. And to me, as if you've taken that many visits and you weren't 100% sure at that point, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I know that they have an official visit to Oklahoma in the fall that they say they're going to take. So that's good news for Oklahoma. Either way, pick Florida or not, it's good news for Oklahoma. They're going to get LeBlanc on an official visit. So this thing is coming to an end, and I'm telling you, the LeBlancs are ready for this thing to come to an end. Like, they went from really enjoying the process to just going, this is super stressful. The more visits they take, the more people start piling on and wanting to know what's going on, the more their phones are ringing, and they're just kind of over it. So we're going to find out a month from now. If you ask me on June 28th how this thing's going to go, I'll guess Oklahoma, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, you can't. That's where we're at. We're guessing at this point because they play it so close to the vest, and I'm just going off little things that I know. Other than that, I mean, Florida could very well be the pick. I mean, that's where we're at. It is that tight. So, what's your take on it, Parker?
I guess I'll just say exactly what I said on the VIP board last night, Brandon. There's a lot of reliable intel to suggest that Oklahoma is in the best position to land Derrick LeBlanc. However, I don't take any intel as gospel with regard to Derrick LeBlanc because you can't at this point. And that's one of the most well camouflaged recruitments that we have ever covered. And I don't think anybody is going to know with 100% certainty where Derrick LeBlanc is going to go until the second he puts on the hat. There's a reason why we're reporting on this the way that we're reporting on it. If he were legitimately leaning OU, and if that was a done deal or close to it, we'd be acting like it was a done deal or close to it, right? And if he was trending away from Oklahoma, if this was looking like it was going to be Florida or Penn State, we'd be saying, you know what, not so sure about OU's chances. Probably want to turn your focus elsewhere and hope that Oklahoma is able to land a couple of the other defensive linemen that they're in on. But the reason why we come on here every week and talk about Derrick LeBlanc in the manner that we do is that this is just at its core a recruitment that has been really well cloaked in mystery, and nobody knows. People can
somebody
think they
knows.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
I think there's staffs out there that know, but obviously they're not divulging, right? And neither is the little box.
And nobody that does know authoritatively is going to divulge. And so this is the type of thing where everybody that's reporting on Derrick LeBlanc's recruitment and everybody that's following it closely is going to have some degree of apprehension heading into that July 28th commitment date. You can say the exact same for Peyton Kirkland. Those two, nobody knows with certainty.
Yeah, that's a fact. Nothing's for certain with either one of those two. As far as Renaud goes, I guess I'll dive into that real quick. Look, he just visited Alabama. There was a lot of people that thought post Alabama he could commit to the Tide. I continue to hear that an official visit to Oklahoma is going to take place in the fall. He had some things he had to do with the transfers that he had done through his high schools and changing his schools that he had to take care of in the classroom. So he could only take like literally one official visit during the summer. And that just happened to be at the very end. And it went to Alabama because Oklahoma was like, look, you're not going to make a decision till later on. We're going to wait and get you on campus for a game. Coach Bates has done a fantastic job. If you talk to people around that area and those that know Jordan Renaud really well, they want him in Norman because of the drive. It's easier for them to get up to the games. It just makes sense to them from a logistics standpoint. That said, it's Jordan's decision. So you're looking at a guy that could go either way, but from what I was told, and it's the feeling across the board, is whether Alabama or Oklahoma, it's whoever gets him on campus last. This is a two-team battle. And Oklahoma fans, look, that's another thing, Parker, I think we need to discuss, because everybody's upset with the amount of commits that Oklahoma is getting right now. But the timeline with Brent Venables, the way they do things. Number two, when you're going up against the elite of the elite, the way OU is right now, as far as targets go, decisions get drug out. The top guys usually tend to drag their decision. If you go back and look at Clemson's classes over the years, think how many of those were November and December and January and February commitments, because those kids drug it out. They wanted to make sure they were big name guys. And Clemson was always known for closing out really hot and really skyrocketing up the rankings. So I think you're going to see that with Oklahoma moving forward. I think the timelines change. Definitely in comparison to Riley, where it was more so summer commits after champion barbecues. But Riley also allowed guys to go take visits elsewhere. That's not the case with Venables. So when you add those two little pieces together and you look at how Alabama does things, you look at how Georgia does things, you look at how Clemson does things, even Ohio State to an extent, where they don't really allow you to go checking around places all the time and doing this, maybe a little bit, but not a lot. They close out as well. They get a lot of their guys as the fall and winter come, and not so much in the summer. So that's, I think, where you're going to see Oklahoma really make a move now is from July to December. I think you're going to see more so from this point forward. I think Oklahoma fans need to get used to it. You're not going to see a lot of January through June commits anymore. I think the timeline shifted. That's just my opinion.
No, I think you're exactly right, Brandon. I think the timeline has shifted drastically, and June going forward, June is probably the month, as we've seen here in 2022, where you're going to start to see the snowball rolling. All right, the Sooners have 4 commits thus far this month. They have a chance to add a 5th on Thursday with Samuel Omasigo, who will be deciding between OU and Florida. Obviously, the 24/7 Sports crystal ball favors the Sooners there. But in July, and as you look across the board, there's a chance, there's an outside chance. I don't want to say it's a likelihood, but there's certainly a chance, Brandon, that by the end of July, OU has 17, 18 commits. I think when we came on with our first show of May, so almost 2 months ago now, we were speculating on what the total might be for Oklahoma by the end of July. And I think you said 13, I said 12. And we were both kind of under the impression that, that's a win for Oklahoma. If you have 12 or 13 guys committed by the end of July, that sets you up well to close the cycle strong. That number feels small right now with 8 guys already committed, potentially a 9th on Thursday, June the 30th, and a whole bunch of guys that are either deciding in July or haven't put out a date, but are expected to decide in July.
Yeah. No, look, just from if you were going to go June 30th to August 15th, and Oklahoma's stuck at 7 commits, correct? I think you could look at somewhere between 13 and 17 commits by August 15th. I think you could look at that. I think that's realistic. Well, let's go August 31st. Over the next 2 months, you could literally, I think Oklahoma could add 10 more commits in the next 2 months. And that's not a stretch by any imagination. And I think it's a lot of their top talent that could be dropping off. And that would allow Oklahoma to really start positioning themselves even better in 2024 and to close out on the guys that are going to hold up and sign and announce on National Signing Day or the All-American games, which generally they've already signed and just announce on the All-American games. So I think Oklahoma, that's probably what you're looking at, is probably a big surge in July, July through August. And then it's going to be, even if they have 17, you could look at another possibly 10 to 12 more commits, because I think Oklahoma could go. I think they are going to sign anywhere between 26 and 30 guys this year. That's my prediction. I think they're going to have a huge class.
Wow.
Do you not agree with that?
No. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a heavy class, and I think they'll shoot for 25, but I also think there will be enough guys that want to come, especially at that linebacker position, which we've talked about before on this, that I can very easily see them going over the 25 signee threshold. I don't think it's out of the question that they're in the 26 to 30 range. And, you talk about those linebackers, obviously Samuel Omasigo his decision is coming Thursday. The likelihood is that it's OU. Then you look ahead to July. Phil Picciotti doesn't seem like he's too far off from a decision. You've got Whit Weeks, who keeps to himself, probably more so than anybody else in this cycle that we cover, save maybe for Petaway. But that's a guy that is high on OU, has been to campus 4 times this calendar year. That's another guy that maybe he ends up a Sooner when it's all said and done. Lewis Carter, Oklahoma's made a lot of progress in his recruitment. Anthony Hill has always felt like kind of a pipe dream to a certain extent, but OU still in that race. Troy Bowles, the prevailing opinion is that he's going to end up at Georgia, but OU's in that. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but OU's in that race. And it's not a foregone conclusion he ends up at Georgia. The point is, you got linebackers on linebackers on linebackers that could end up in Norman, Oklahoma, playing for Brent Venables. So that's a position where you can kind of see them taking a surplus. And then you take a look at some of those positions where there's a guy on the board that you have no choice but to leave the light on for. Like, say Richard Young wants to come to Oklahoma. Say at the end of it all, he decides, you know what? not really in on Alabama. Don't love Notre Dame, Oregon. Don't really see myself there. But you know what? I want to go play for DeMarco Murray at the University of Oklahoma. If that happens in October, November, and the Sooners already have Caleb Hicks locked down, they pick up somebody like Dalen Smothers to the point where they have 2 backs already signed in the class, they're not going to turn Richard Young away, right? So there are guys like that on the board. David Hicks certainly falls into that category as well. And there are a couple others, Anthony Hill, etc., that you will make room for regardless of when they want to jump on board. So I think this will be a recruiting class all the way up until National Signing Day that OU fans are going to have to stay engaged with every step of the way, because I think while the majority of your commits are going to come in the month of July, all things considered, there are some guys that will still be on the board on into the fall and even the winter that Oklahoma will have a shot down the line to land. And who knows, there may be guys that don't even have offers from Oklahoma yet that end up part of this class. We see it every year. Guys that become late offers, late evals for the staff. But once they get that OU offer, maybe they have an offer sheet where they have some Power 5 programs coming after them. They have some schools with some tradition, but nothing that compares to Oklahoma. And then all of a sudden, OU ends up being a late player and maybe getting their commitment. We see it every single year, regardless of whether there's a coaching change or not. It's really easy to point to like 5 or 6 of those guys from last class, but that has more to do with the coaching change than anything else. Regardless, there will be guys down the stretch in September, October, November that maybe we don't even expect them to be in play for Oklahoma right now, Brandon, or fans don't even know who they are. Nobody knew who Heath Ozida was a week ago. So that just shows you how quickly things can change in recruiting.
Yeah. And look, if you should definitely read the chat right now if you want to while I talk, because it's going to be about what I've been reading in the chat, and I've actually been commenting, because everybody seems to think that when I said Oklahoma can end up with 26 to 30, and they're like, and like 18 of them are going to be 3 stars. Like it's, yeah, like there's not 18 3-stars left on the board for Oklahoma to go get as far as like their top guys. Like it may be a B or C option, but like guys, like the guys that are announcing that we've talked about potentially announcing, let's just do over the next 2 weeks, right? Okay. Or let's do July. Let's talk about July. Okay. Omasi goes a 4-star, announcing on July 30th. PJ Adebari's June 30th. I keep saying July. I keep mixing up.
You're good.
Adebari, who could announce within the next week or two, is a top 100 player in the country. Caden Green, top 100 player in the country, which means he's a 4-star above. Jacoby Johnson could announce by the end of July before the season starts, 4-star. Makari Vickers, who Alabama has picked up a bunch of defensive backs lately, 5-star, by the way, and that could actually work in Oklahoma's favor. And there's a really good chance that Makari Vickers visits Oklahoma at the end of July. Throwing that out there, not saying that it's 100% sure, but there's buzz that could be coming to fruition potentially. So if that happens, and Vickers, who wants to decide in July, that's another 4-star guy. So that's 5 4-stars. You've got who else am I? Jaquaze Petaway, top 100 player in the country, top 50 player in the country. Anthony Evans, another 4-star. Derrick LeBlanc, a 4-star if he chose Oklahoma. Peyton Kirkland, a 4-star if he chose. That's 9 right there. Picciotti's he's a 3-star on 247, but 4-star. He's going to be a 4, so he's 4-star elsewhere. He's a really good player. So that's 10 4-stars right there. I mean, then you've got obviously Jordan Renaud still on the board. You've got Caden McDonald still on the board. You've got Lewis Carter, Troy Bowles. Trying to think. You've got Peyton Bowen. You've got Ryan Yates. You've got, these are all 4-star guys that I'm just throwing out there that Oklahoma's in a really good spot for. David Hicks, 5-star. Obviously, Anthony Hill, I think, is going to A&M. Parker and I both agree that's just a waiting game at this point. It's A&M all the way at this point. That's my opinion. Jeez. I mean, we've named probably 16, 17 4-stars just off the top of our head. Is Oklahoma going to get more 3-stars? Probably. But
Sure.
yeah, if they end up with, tell me this, if they end up with 10 3-stars, they end up with
15 blue chips.
15 4-stars and 3 5-stars. That would put them at 28. How mad is the OU fans going to be? Because that's probably going to put them at 5, 6 as far as the rankings go. You cannot be upset with that. And we're talking about rankings in June. That's what irritates me more than anything. People are worried about rankings in June. Who cares? It doesn't matter right now. I know it's just, I get fans are, they're fanatics. Y'all are fanatics. That your job is to be crazed about every little situation and to be emotional about every little situation, whether it's common sense behind it or not. You're going to do what you're going to do because you're fans and you're emotionally invested in this. Totally understand it. But sometimes take a step back and be like, dude, there's like 6 months until national, 5 months till National Signing Day, the first one, and there's 7 months until the second one. You got plenty of time to worry about this crap. Let's let June and August roll through. And if by September 1st, we're still having this same conversation, I will be on your side. I promise. Parker and I both will be going, there's a problem. But I don't think there's going to be. I think you guys are going to be really happy starting on June 30th and beyond. That's just my gut feeling right now. Could be wrong. But I think the Oklahoma staff is really good recruiters. I really do.
You don't say.
We haven't talked about Dalen Smothers either.
No, we really haven't. And that's a guy that could be deciding within the next week or two. I think I mentioned that earlier, but look,
Final
Four is.
I wrote about it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Final Four is OU, Alabama, North Carolina State, and Florida State. There seems to be, based on some conversations that we've had with some folks, Brandon, there seems to be a more than viable chance OU ends up being the spot for Dalen Smothers, and not taking anything to the bank necessarily at this point in time. But there's some credible reason to believe that Dalen Smothers could be a Sooner when it's all said and done.
Yeah, look, I wrote on OU Insider today, and I said, look, I guess I'll pick Oklahoma just because DeMarco. It's hard to pick against DeMarco Murray and what he's done over the last few years. But Smothers has been to Florida State 3 times. His mom went with him. Now, of the visits that he's done to Oklahoma, everybody that's involved with his recruitment has been to Norman. He's and people I talk to seem very confident in Oklahoma's chances, and some even feel like Oklahoma's going to get him. That said, I'm not there yet. I am not personally there yet. I have become so much more cynical in my coverage than I used to be. And when it gets that close, I'm of a see it to believe it type deal, just because Florida State was the leader in March. Oklahoma offers him, and he takes a visit, and Oklahoma becomes a leader. He takes an official. Oklahoma definitely is a leader. Then you start hearing this buzz of Florida State as they get the last visit. And then that visit went so particularly well that it's hard not to feel like this thing is, if it's not OU 51-49, it's Florida State 51-49 as far as like the chances go. So it is going to be a tight race. But even if Oklahoma doesn't land Smothers, I will say this. I think DeMarco, being as good as he is and being who he is, has a chance to sneak up on somebody in 2023. If he doesn't do that, I think you could see, trying to think of who am I thinking of here out of Arlington? Martin.
Sergio Snyder.
Sergio Snyder. You get Sergio Snyder, who is a very, 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 very good player. A guy that has a chance to really skyrocket up the rankings. Just a solid player. I think you could see a really big time transfer potentially coming in. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying, like, those are the options. And DeMarco has always seemed to come through, whether it's Eric Gray, Gavin Sawchuk, Javante Barnes. Look, he got Bentavious to come in and nobody knew about it as a walk-on. I was talking to a source the other day. They said this is the perfect running back room for DeMarco Murray. They have the perfect running back room. They have 2 walk-ons that are likely to be scholarship guys when it's all said and done. Bentavious and your boy from Vegas,
Tawi Walker.
Yeah. You were so high on him, so I always call him your boy. He's a guy that has a chance to be. They both have a chance to be scholarship guys. And then I've heard Marcus Major, great things about Marcus Major. I've heard unbelievable things about Gavin Sawchuk lately. Unbelievable things about that guy. And there is a lot of people that think he has a chance to be downright special in that program. And he's only been on campus for literally a month. Like, they think he is so good and so fast. There's people that think he's the fastest player on the team. Think about that. So you had him, you got Javante Barnes, you got Eric Gray, you got Marcus Major, you got Tawi Walker, you got Batavius, you've got, I mean, that is a deep running back room. You remember a couple of years ago when OU fans were like, running back room sucks. 2021, they could not, as far as like the depth, they're like, it was awful as far as depth. You're having to use walk-ons. Now they've got walk-ons that would be scholarship players everywhere else, backing up 4 dudes or 5 dudes that are really good and have a chance to be downright special when it's all said and done. So, I mean, with Caleb Hicks already on board, I think if they don't get Dalen Smothers, DeMarco is going to come through one way or another with another running back, number 1, number 2. They're already so young and in such a good position. I don't think you really worry all that too much about it and get too flustered. Do you agree with that, Parker?
Yes, I do.
I want to see if the Oklahoma fans agree with that in the chat. Do you guys agree? Yes or no?
We will see.
Yeah, for sure. We will see.
That's what the chat says. We will see.
Yes, we will always see. Sean Staple. He can't be positive. That guy has to be negative no matter what. That's why I love him. He cannot. Like, as positive you'll get out of him as we will see. It doesn't matter. So, anyway. Somebody
asked, what are the odds we get Richard Young? Look, don't count on it. Yeah, don't count on it. Let that be the most pleasant of surprises if it does.
Yes,
happen.
That would be.
Let that be the most pleasant of surprises. All right. Well, yeah.
Anyways,
I think we're over an hour here. So unless I think we've hit about everything.
Well, we didn't do by Job.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's briefly touch on that before we get out of here.
I guess I'll go since that's my dude. Yeah. Okay. Look, I was told Oklahoma was always going to be in his top 3 today. So there's that. And do I think Oklahoma will be the pick? No. I'm leaning Michigan State. He had a great time at Michigan State. It fits what he wants to do. He's got one of the best pass rush guys in the country that could coach him there. I think his name's Brandon Jenkins, right?
Brandon Jordan.
I always call him Jenkins. Brandon Jordan. He's one of the best. I mean, NFL guys go to him to learn how to be pass rushers or better pass rushers. So he is a guy or by Job's a guy that, and he hasn't taken an official to Alabama. He hasn't taken an official to Oklahoma. The only one he's taken official to was Michigan State. Now, if he does commit to Michigan State, do I think it's 100% over? I do not. I think this is one of those things that is going to play out. Now, do I think he signs with OU? I don't know. But I think he'll listen as the season goes on if he doesn't pick Oklahoma at the very least. Mainly because he's in Norman. It's really hard not to listen to the hometown team, regardless of what you think. Now, if he comes out and says, I'm done taking visits, I'm not taking calls, that's a whole different deal. But he does have a really good relationship with Miguel Chavis. And that is one of the main factors. And he likes Brent Venables. This new staff has done a lot to put Oklahoma back in position, but I don't think they've made it. This is my opinion. I think they've pressed harder for the Jabron Harveys, the Colton Vasics, and the PJ Adebawores of the world than they have by Job. That is my opinion. I don't know that for a fact. So I think it'll be Michigan State at the end of the day. And I think for Bai, that's a really good place to go to develop and learn. There are still people around him, however, that feel Oklahoma is the best spot because of the patience that the staff will have with him, because of the soul mission, and because of his, obviously, the language barrier difference and him learning the game of football. And number two, he'll have a support system of a bunch of people around him that know him very well and love him dearly in Norman. So that's why, even if it's a Michigan State pick, I'm hard pressed to say I still think Bai will listen to Oklahoma to an extent. Now, come National Signing Day, he may still end up just sign wherever he commits and he's over with. But right now, I'm also told that he hasn't made his decision 100%. He's sifting through those three, talking to the coaches, and we'll see where that goes. But I'm picking Michigan State.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair stance to take, especially because obviously Bai's trainer, Sean Cooper, goes back a long way with Brandon Jordan. And so there's a relationship there. Yes. And as you've talked about before on the live, Brandon, Bai Jobe, and there's a lot of reasons for this, Oklahoma doesn't have the same sway for a kid like Bai Jobe as it has for a lot of other in-state kids. Somebody like Cole Adams, right? The reason Bai Jobe is in all likelihood not going to end up a Sooner is far different from the reason that Cole Adams is in all likelihood not going to end up a Sooner, right? You can't paint with too broad a brush with these in-state kids. They all have their own priorities. They all have their own reasons. They all have their own backgrounds. And so I think if Oklahoma comes up a little short at the wide receiver position, Cole Adams will probably be one that the staff and the fan base are kind of kicking themselves for years to come. But with Bai Jobe, you know, it was never one that you could really count on, especially when the former staff at Oklahoma dragged their feet for so long in offering him. So two completely different situations. And again, I understand that in a lot of fans' eyes, it's inexcusable to miss on in-state kids, but not all in-state kids are wired the same way.
Well, just real quick, this is people going, well, Oklahoma's getting recruited by Michigan State. Like, no, like we just told you that Oklahoma did not, like, if you put it in priority, and again, this is my opinion, and I bet Parker, you probably agree with this, it would go PJ, Colton, Jabron Harvey, then Bai Jobe. That would be probably how it would look as far as who they're pushing hardest for. So to sit there and say, oh, Oklahoma, no, like Oklahoma is doing a really good job with the top kid out of all of them is PJ Adebawore. Period. It's not even close as far as the rankings and just skill set and development and all that. Now, Bai Jobe has a massive upside. He can end up being the best of the best when it's all said and done. That is guaranteed. His athleticism is off the charts. But if we're going off today, June 28th, 2022, PJ Adebawore is a better football player. Bai Jobe would probably agree with that because he isn't as seasoned as PJ. That's a fact. So he's going to take, and Bai completely understands this. I talk to him about this all the time. He understands he's going to take a few years to develop to be able to play at the level that he wants to play at in college. So, and look, this is another thing you all have to understand. In today's transfer portal world, if he goes up to Michigan State and just decides he doesn't feel at home, him ending back up at Oklahoma is still on the table and a very good chance. So just keep that in mind. Like this is different than any other time that we've ever been covering recruiting. It's just completely different these days, especially with the one-time transfer rule. So anyways, it's not you're getting beat out by Michigan State. It's Oklahoma basically chose who to go after harder than the other. And you're seeing the repercussions of that now. Could it bite him in the butt down the road? Maybe, but I like what Oklahoma's done as far as how they've recruited the edge so far. Anyways.
All right. I think that's that brings us full circle, I would say.
All right, guys. Yeah, if you're not on OU Insider, go ahead. I think, are we still doing the 60% off? I'm not really sure. You want to go check that out, Parker, and see if we're doing it?
Let me get you a clear answer on that. So as of right now, it appears we have a 30% off promotion. Is what it looks like to me. So
well,
about $6 a month.
Yeah, basically $6 a month right now. Or you can join. It's 30% off. Be $75, get you 1 year. Then after that, you get you stay with us for 1 year. You get Paramount Plus after that. And if you get Paramount Plus and you pay the full price and not the 30% off, which is like $108, and again, that would be after a year of already being on OU Insider. Paramount Plus is awesome, by the way, and like I love it. I was watching it, streaming it on the plane ride out here to LA, which we didn't even talk about. Is I'm here, freaking like we talked about everything but me going and seeing Jackson Arnold, the 5-star quarterback Jackson Arnold that OU has committed to him. I'm going to watch him tonight in literally 45 minutes. Going to be out there seeing him compete against some of the top quarterbacks in the country, and we will have plenty of updates on that on OUinsider.com. So, hey, like it's $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards if you want to do that. Or is it, are they still doing the $9.95 promo, or is that, or is it still, no, it's $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. Last month it was $9.95 if you signed up month to month and you got Paramount Plus with it. So they've derailed that. We're going to probably run that promo again here pretty soon. So pay attention if you don't sign up. But right now, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards, month to month, or $75. You would get all of the football season, all through July, all through August, all through September, October, November, all the way back to June 28th if you signed up today, which means you would get the spring game. You would get both national signing days. You would get all the transfer, all the coaching changes, all the recruiting stuff, all the season stuff that we're going to be doing, insider stuff, team notes that we drop all July. I mean, July is going to be really busy if you're an Oklahoma fan and you like recruiting. So sign up now. We'd love to have you. We're growing super fast, and it's all thanks to you guys. Like we are so blessed to literally be able to cover, and I can't thank you guys enough. So anyways, that's going to do it for us on this edition of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drumm. You guys have a blessed night. We will see you guys next week.